My mother lied to get money out of my father during the divorce, but on Christmas I gave her the hotel receipt from when her infidelity began, and the Hunger Games started. I know I'm the bad guy here, but someone had to do it. I also wasn't going to let this slide as if it were okay. Cheating is not part of my values. Hi, the only context you need to know is this: my mom left my dad when I was 14. She always presented it as if they fell out of love and were better off as friends, except they weren't friends. They barely spoke. She constantly tore him down and acted like the divorce was some noble act she'd done for our sake. I never believed that, partly because I wasn't stupid, and also because my mother has this habit of rewriting history depending on who's listening. Now that you know that, we can move forward a few years, when suddenly she's with Dominic, a man I disliked even before knowing what I know now. He's the kind of person who expects everyone to treat him like he's the shiniest piece of manure in the barn. He loves using phrases like "I'm a real man because I provide," and his favorite, "Your mother went through hell with your father, but now I'll take care of her." He treats me like I'm some stray street cat my mother picked up, even though I've never asked either of them for anything. They've been married almost 9 years, and when I finally had the chance to disappear from their lives, this stray cat got as far away from those two as possible. But I never liked their relationship. It always felt like it started way too fast, and my mom was way too defensive about the timeline, like when the original one doesn't work in your favor and you need to invent another. Then I found the receipt in October. I was house-sitting for my mother while she and Dominic went on a cruise. I accepted because they paid me to do it and I wouldn't have any contact with them. I was bored. She still has cable channels and the internet is terrible. While looking for a book to read, I ended up finding the evidence. There was a folder labeled Taxes 2014, which is hilarious because anyone who knows my mom knows she labels things incorrectly on purpose so people won't look inside. If you want to find the family recipes, you have to look in the folder named Beach Trip 2007. If you want the photos from the 2007 beach trip, which trust me, you don't, you have to look in Autobiography 2003. I opened it, and inside was a hotel receipt. Room for 2, 1 king bed, wine bar charges, late checkout, everything dated 8 months before she left my dad. From what I could remember about that date, she had told everyone she was on a retreat. I know, I'm the bad guy here, I'm being paid to house sit and I'm snooping. But I don't like cheaters, and I don't like liars, which my mother was being at that moment. Right then I decided that this year's Christmas gift was going to be that receipt in a frame. No, not a normal frame, the ugliest, tackiest, shiniest, rhinestone-covered discount store monstrosity I could find. The kind of thing you buy when you want someone to feel insulted and confused at the same time. But I wrapped it beautifully. I'm not a monster. Christmas dinner at my grandmother's house is always hell because the entire family is there and there's always drama. This year there was going to be a peak of drama, but at least the good kind. My mom acts like the queen of the family. Dominic pretends he's the father of everyone, even though half the family can't stand him. My siblings become little weak diplomats who don't want another ruined holiday. My grandmother defends my mother as if she's one step away from sainthood, maybe she's thinking about killing her so they canonize her sooner. So everyone's pretending to like each other. I'm sitting there bored, waiting for gift time, with anxiety that's going to kill me. There's a round of boring, thoughtless gifts, and then finally she opens mine. My mom freezes. She doesn't want to show what she got even though everyone wants to know. Since I knew she might get shy at the last second, I brought plenty of copies to pass around the table behind her, along with the necessary context so everyone would understand what the receipt meant. Then my mom starts crying because everyone is reading the paper and looking at her. Dominic starts yelling at me that I ruined Christmas, but I tell him he did the same when I was 14. I didn't tell the whole context, but my Christmas gift that year was, "Your father and I are getting a divorce." My grandmother starts praying louder. One of my siblings asks if I'm proud of myself, and honestly, yes, I was a little. I had waited years to get my revenge. Everyone storms out of the dining room one by one. It's dramatic and chaotic and honestly the first interesting family party I've had since I was 12. The aftermath has been a mess. My mom has been texting me saying she's disappointed in me as a daughter, that as a woman I should have understood. Dominic called me vindictive and disturbed. My siblings say Christmas is for forgiveness and love, not for things like that. I didn't respond to any of them because I didn't want to defend myself. I did what I believed was right. And I know I'm probably the bad guy for being vengeful, but I'm not here to ask about that. Just to tell my story, and that's it. Update 1. When I told my story, I thought exposing 2 cheaters was enough. But some people believed that wasn't enough to justify what I did and that there was more behind it. I hoped that by saying they cheated, I could skip the detailed context, but here's a bit more. When my parents divorced, custody was shared. And when I turned 16 and could choose which parent to live with, my dad started traveling more for work, which made staying with him 100% of the time impractical. I ended up spending a lot of time with my mother and Dominic, both of them talking trash about my father the entire time. Dominic liked kids, so he always got along with my siblings. But with me it was different. I think even my mother shared that feeling. To be honest, I always believed she kept me with her just to spite my father. She could have let me move in with him when I was 14 instead of making me live half the time with them. Now let's go back to the present and to what happened after Christmas. First, Dominic decided he needed space, so he packed some bags and went to stay with one of his sons. I only know this because my sister texted me. I haven't blocked anyone yet, it's not like anything they write affects me. Apparently, he left the day after my little festive gift because he didn't feel respected. I don't know how a man who sleeps with married women can even say something like that with a straight face. He has to be joking, but whatever. I guess the receipt ruined his appetite. My mom didn't take it well. She called me 8 times in one morning, which is not normal for her because we barely talk. Here I'd like to explain why I agreed to house sit for her if I don't get along with my mother, because I literally just had to stay there and earn some extra money without having any contact with them. They left the key under a decoration, and I could leave hours before they came back. In fact, I could have said I stayed there and simply remained in my own home, which I did after finding the Christmas present for my mother. The money was already on the kitchen counter. Sorry, I'm not a rich girl like some of you who can turn down $500 for house sitting for a week. Half of the voicemails were her crying, saying she couldn't believe I humiliated her like this. The other half insisting that I misunderstood what that paper meant. I won't say the real name of the hotel my mother went to, but if it were called "Come Sleep with Your Lover Here," it would be subtler than the actual name of the dump where she spent the weekend. She kept saying she couldn't breathe and that her marriage was in danger. I don't know why she was acting as if I had opened the hotel room door myself and dragged them out by the ankles to make them do those things. They're the ones who booked that room, I just recycled the evidence. Anyway, a few days later my grandmother decided she was going to fix everything and organized one of those meetings where the matriarch speaks and everyone must listen. I wasn't going to miss that for anything, it would be like setting off fireworks and turning your back on them. When I arrived, everyone was sitting in a sort of circle, staring at each other. My mom had a tissue in her hand to wipe the sand coming out of her eyes. She was crying or making crying noises, but nothing was actually coming out. Dominic looked like someone had forced him to attend at gunpoint, maybe my grandmother hired a sniper from her church congregation. My siblings were there too, but they looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. My grandmother opened with the typical speech, "We're a family, and we're going to solve this as a family." At that moment, I knew this was going to be one of those meetings where people pretend to resolve problems but are really just trying to blame one person so they'll apologize. Spoiler, that person was me. Everyone took turns telling me the same thing in different flavors. I ruined Christmas, I reopened old wounds, I opened Pandora's box, this is ancient history, and my mother had her reasons. I'd love to know what those reasons were for sleeping with another man while married. One of Dominic's daughters was there too, with her hand on his back to comfort him since he jumped every time something sensitive was mentioned. At one point he took out his phone and said he needed to show everyone something. Then he did something I'm sure he thought would go differently. It turns out he had screenshots of my mother talking about my dad for years. There were things about how my father abandoned us and how I inherited his coldness, even things about how I was just like him. She even talked badly about my siblings at one point. None of this surprised me, but my siblings looked like they had just discovered Santa was a criminal. My mom tried to defend it, but it sounded pathetic. She sarcastically thanked her stepdaughter, who looked like she was thinking, "What did I even do wrong?" That's when I thought things were getting interesting. Everything stopped being about me and started getting messy. I just sat there eating a roll, enjoying the show. Then, out of nowhere, Dominic said he needed to clear his conscience. He admitted that he and my mother had been emotionally entangled before the divorce, but that it hadn't been a full affair. I don't know what that means. Either they were in a hotel bed together or they weren't. Half-cheating is not a thing. I don't think they rented a room for a whole weekend just to lie there holding hands. If they did, they're even dumber than I thought. But that's what I imagine when people say it wasn't a full affair. I have other ideas of what a not full affair might be, but I won't put them into words because they disgust me. He also said it was just a mistake and that we all commit sins and that if not, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I hadn't gone prepared, so I didn't have a stone. And the roll I was eating wasn't very hard. But that's what I threw at Dominic's head, which ended up being pretty funny because of the way it bounced off. My grandmother looked at me and told me I wasn't helping. Obviously. I hadn't gone there to help. My siblings started speaking up and attacking my mother and Dominic. Then everyone began arguing about the timeline as if that would fix anything. As they started talking in circles and I was getting sleepy, I decided to leave. I hope I didn't walk out right as things got good. So we never had major problems, but we also never developed a good relationship. But my mother may have developed that need to request shared custody, even though she didn't need me, purely to be vindictive toward Dominic, because he did the same thing once his relationship with my mother became official. Up until then, his daughter mattered less to him than, well, me. I barely saw her, and he spent as little time with her as possible. That was until he recruited my mother's help. The first thing Dominic's ex-wife showed me were screenshots of texts between my mom and Dominic from years ago, obtained thanks to his daughter snooping through his phone somehow. I have things like Dominic telling my mother what to say in court about his daughter, entire paragraphs about how, whenever his daughter came to our house, she showed signs of being abused mentally and physically by her mother. Things like being called names, being shaken too hard, and similar accusations. Nothing sexual, but enough for a judge to raise an eyebrow. All of this was collected by the daughter who had been digging through her father's phone. There were also messages between Dominic and my mom talking about the infidelity and other things, like how it would be better to get majority custody, or full custody, to avoid paying child support and instead receive child support, which is something my mother got and Dominic also got from his ex-wife. Finally, the ex-wife told me she plans to file a lawsuit against Dominic for years of unpaid child support and for taking her daughter away all these years. I don't remember much from that time, but I do know that in the beginning, Dominic's daughter didn't come over often, and then suddenly she started staying much more. That was because Dominic got full custody with supervised visits for his daughter, along with a large child support check because his ex-wife earns quite well. The reason she wanted to talk to me, even though it didn't directly involve me, was because she wanted to know if my father had been in a similar situation with my mother. She asked for my dad's contact information because she had no other way to reach him, since she didn't know who he was. She also preferred to ask my permission before contacting him. I talked to my dad, who agreed, and I gave her his number so they could talk. And to think I believed a hotel receipt was the biggest thing that could happen, a little family drama was all I was expecting. But things keep getting better, and I have front row seats. I still don't know if my father has spoken with her yet, but I plan to call him soon to hear the details of that conversation. Update 3. Hi, now I can tell you what I talked about with my father, though I had to wait an entire week. I think I called every night asking if there were any updates, but he kept saying no. He had exchanged messages with Dominic's ex-wife, but they hadn't yet had their first meeting to bring down my mother and her lover. My father is going to use the proof from the messages and even the same lawyer as Dominic's ex-wife to sue my mother, whom I'll call Letty from now on because it feels appropriate. Dominic is Dominic's real name, I didn't bother hiding it, but Letty's is not real. Though it would have been fitting, because instead of deciding this in court, we'd be settling it in an underground race. Apparently there was a meeting without me. I'd been banned from those events for throwing food, but here's what I know, while everyone was yelling, my grandmother fainted. She hit the wall as she fell. It sounds horrible, but she's fine and the wall is fine too. At first it wasn't, but it was okay about 10 minutes later. She kept saying, this family has been cursed since the divorce, which is funny because the only reason the separation was friendly was because my father didn't know about the infidelity. I said this in one of my comments, but I'll repeat it in case anyone missed it. During the meeting, my mother completely broke down. She said I humiliated her for sport and that Dominic's ex-wife is mentally unstable and jealous. If it's a sport, at least it's good for your health, right? She kept yelling that I'm obsessed with her and that I've always been crazy, and that she had no choice but to protect herself. Protect herself from what? I had never even raised my voice at her until the Christmas disaster. Dominic also had his moment while my grandmother had cartoon birds flying around her head. He claimed my mother lied to him, that he didn't know she was still in a relationship, and that he thought she was already going through the divorce because that's what she told him. That last part might be the only true thing he said, at least from my mother's side. Then my mother and Dominic claimed that I broke things in the house while I was house-sitting. I didn't record myself leaving the house because I expected things to unfold the way they did. I recorded because I expected my mother to demand her $500 back. Not only did I take photos, I also filmed myself leaving the key on the table and closing the door behind me. They don't have a back door, so once it's closed, even if it's not locked, the front door cannot be opened again. In summary, my grandmother is fine. The wall probably suffered more than she did. I wasn't there, so I don't know if she actually hit her head or if it was just the scare, but she's okay. My father is suing, not for all the child support money, but for the years where I could have lived full-time with him and my mother lied, along with Dominic, to gain majority custody and child support specifically because of me. My siblings chose voluntarily to stay with her. It's not many years, but Dominic's years are. My father hasn't told me the numbers, I don't know if he even knows, but I promise I'll keep an ear open in case I hear anything. Update 4. So here's a quick summary of what has happened since the last update, because it has been non-stop chaos, but the kind of chaos you love and find entertaining because it doesn't affect you personally. Dominic officially separated from my mom. They are in a separation period and then will file for divorce. Dominic cheated. If you thought this circus needed more monkeys, a woman I don't know showed up to tell my mother that Dominic cheated on her with her. I don't think my mom believed it, but Dominic wanted to leave her anyway, so the divorce should continue unless my mom's husband changes his mind. Apparently he doesn't want to be with her because his life is a complete disaster thanks to his daughter. I know this because my mom wrote to me saying she is willing to remove me from her life to work on her marriage. It was the first time in a long time I responded to her, but I had to. I wrote, "You're doing the right thing." I would never forgive myself if my mother lost her garbage husband. Besides, you don't have a daughter anymore, don't you remember? And to think people were recommending that I block my mom. If I had done that, I'd be on the Netflix subreddit right now asking what drama to watch tonight instead of witnessing one in real time. I didn't hear much from my mom for a while until more chaos happened. I think what happened before the next thing I'm going to tell you must have been interesting, but you can't always find out everything that happens. I'm not in the epicenter of the gossip right now. My mom immediately spiraled. She fell apart to the point of hating Dominic. She's inventing something new every time she speaks, although there's a chance some of it could be true. First she said Dominic was abusive. Then she changed to saying he wants to get back with his ex-wife. Then she asked for sympathy because she was cheated on by Dominic. My dad must be hallucinating on peyote right now because there isn't even a minimum hint of truth in what she said about him. My siblings are still on her side in a way. They've always been mom's kids, and when given the option to live with one parent, because they were older than me, they chose her. That's why my father can't do anything about the money. My grandmother is fine. I wouldn't have made fun of her if I didn't know she was okay. Her fainting was more of a dramatization than an actual concern. It could also have been the wine she likes to drink, but I wasn't there to confirm that. In family meetings she always has a glass in her hand, so I can guess this one wasn't any different. I think for the moment, the meetings at her house are completely cancelled. Anyway, it's likely only my mother and one of my siblings will still go. My father and Letty are suing, as I said in my previous update. Though I regret to inform you that Brian, as people have decided to call my father, is not trying to steal Toretto's wife. Nothing romantic has developed between them, and unless Dominic has a sister, those are all the similarities. Also, my father is a motorcycle guy. He doesn't have a car. Dominic doesn't look like Vin Diesel either. For starters, he has hair on his head, though not much gray matter, and his car is one of those mom SUVs used to take kids to soccer practice. The only time I've seen him run was to the bathroom when he thought he wasn't going to make it because the food upset his stomach. For now, I'll leave it here until I have signs of new information. Update 5. This will be brief but intense, because now I know what happened between my mom and Dominic that made her start attacking him. No, it's not something I gathered from various sources, it's what my mother wrote to me one night, drunk, around 2 in the morning. I can assume she was drunk because she must have inherited that from my grandmother, and also because it was written horribly. But I'll try to piece everything together coherently based on what I understood. I asked her to clarify some things the next day when I read it, but she refused to answer. My mother went to the place where Dominic was staying. She convinced the owner that she was his wife and that she wanted to prepare something romantic for him. She had bought things to cook and even showed the manager the clothes she planned. Update 6. Hi, I'm a little sad. My life won't be the same after this update. I think everyone was right that I should have avoided the drama and stayed away from all these people, but I couldn't help myself. I'm sad because the drama is coming to an end, and I don't know what I'll do with my life after this. Yes, I think this will be the last update for several reasons. First, my mother has blocked me. One boring night while I was having drinks with some friends, they insisted I write to my mom to ask if there were any updates. They know everything, but that's when I discovered she had blocked me. Well, I blocked her too now. The second reason is that the lawsuits have ended. My mother's divorce from Dominic also came to an end. My father was able to recover part of the money my mother had dishonestly obtained at the beginning. My dad didn't want to tell me the exact amount, but after some time he said it was around $22,000. Not exactly a small amount, says the person who practically lived off months of gossip for earning an extra $500. Yes, the best $500 I ever made in my life. Finding out more details about Letty's lawsuit was a bit harder. My dad didn't want to tell me, or didn't know, and calling her to ask seemed rude. How do you even ask something like that? Hi, how are you? I'm the daughter of your ex-husband's ex-wife and I was wondering how much money you managed to take back from that dirtbag. But I was in contact with the daughter of said dirtbag, who fed me gossip during this whole time, including something for the final 2 parts. Before I tell you the amount, I want you to sit down and take a sip of your favorite drink, just so you can spit it out. The amount Letty recovered is enough to buy several 1970 Dodge Chargers, $155,000. And you know what it cost to make that happen? $1 for the frame and $2 for the wrapping paper. Practically a bargain if we don't count the lawyer. The last piece of gossip, and the one that makes me saddest because I know it's probably the last, is that there was more to my mother's visit to the place where Dominic was staying. My mother didn't tell me, thankfully, that she was waiting for him wearing the clothes she had bought for that night. Yes, it's not something any daughter wants to imagine. Also, the girlfriend or mistress of Dominic caused more damage after my mother left, because he was trying to convince her not to file charges against my mother for ripping out chunks of her hair. Dominic wanted the simplest divorce possible so he wouldn't have to spend more money on lawyers. He even considered filing the divorce himself, which is something you can do in this state, but that wasn't possible because my mother wanted to fight over some things. Although I think it wasn't as ugly in the end. So yes, this is goodbye. It's bittersweet because we've been through so much together, but I knew this day would come.